Today's conversation is with Amanda Wood, a senior director at Becker, which is a DC-based legislative engagement firm. Amanda's primary focus is on assisting clients with federal funding needs. Amanda previously served as legislative director to Senator Bob Graham, a moderate Democrat from Florida, and has spent an entire career helping public safety companies engage with Congress. From accessing unique and obscure grants to helping with the congressional earmarking process, we had an engaging, if somewhat technical, conversation about how federal spending decisions in public safety are made, what the change has been between the Biden and Trump administrations, what lobbyists even do all day, and how the federal funding calendar affects, well, everything. So buckle up and enjoy this conversation with the effervescent Amanda Wood.
Our audience has been mostly investors in public safety, entrepreneurs in the space, building and trying to navigate that environment. And then we also have practitioners, so actual, street level police officers and technology leaders inside of agencies too. So I think this will be pretty cool for people to hear from somebody that's like inside of the plumbing of federal government and state government, and with as many years of experience as you have. So tell the people, give the people what they want. Give them a little bit of a background on yourself.
Okay, great. So I was born in North Carolina. I grew up in Detroit. At the age of 13, moved to Miami, which was a little bit of a culture shock. And then rough. And then came up to DC for college. I went to Georgetown. And when I graduated, in fact, even before I graduated, I started working for Senator Bob Graham from Florida, senior senator from Florida. Amazing. Moderate member of Congress, member of the Senate, and worked for him for 7 years. I've started on the front phones and ended up his last legislative director before he retired. And then since then, I've been really continuing the same kind of work I did on the Hill, which was a lot of helping communities and nonprofits get access to federal resources. So I've worked for 2 different firms, and really what has unified all the work I've done is federal funding, knowing where the money is hidden, helping cities and counties and law enforcement agencies, and then also the companies that do business with them. So helping their customers to get funding.
Absolutely. And we came to know each other through that exact pathway when Multitude was just kind of getting going. It's like something that I had done in my past job at a different defense technology startup is, it really helps to have a Sherpa guide you a little bit on where you can find grant money and even earmarks. I know that's a thing. I want to make sure we talk about that.
That's a big thing. I am in deep on earmarks this week.
I want to hear all about that, but I think the first question that'll be on a lot of people's minds, new administration, things are, I think, very different than they were under the kind of business as usual Biden administration, or not. I don't know. Correct me here. Like, what's it like now that there's a Trump White House?
Well, I've found the past 50 days doing a lot of fact checking and truth telling and counseling for my clients, because some of the things that have happened since swearing in day have been very unusual. And some of them have been pretty much regular order, but maybe you didn't hear about it last time around. So what you probably didn't know, and what happens before most transitions of presidential administrations, is in the last 20 days before Biden left office, they pushed so many grant solicitations out. They wanted them all out on the street, things that I didn't expect for months. And then what happened, which often happens, is the new administration says, whoa, hold on.
Yeah,
let's bring them back. Let's reconsider this. And so that has happened. And that is pretty. What isn't normal is really broad statements about, we're pausing all federal spending. And that isn't normal because it's illegal. There is this little law called the Congressional Impoundment Act of 1974. And whenever I tell people that, I feel like I'm on an episode of West Wing because it's totally obscure and silly. But it
It's in the
basically is
news
a
a lot
law.
right now, though. It's in the
Oh,
news.
I mean, yeah, everyone's talking about it now.
Impoundment is the word of the month.
Impoundment. And so what the Congressional Impoundment Act of 1974 says is that if Congress appropriates funds, the executive branch has to carry that out, whether they are the administration that signed that bill into law or not. So there have been 2 court cases in the past few weeks that have said to this administration, hey, if the funds have been appropriated, y'all need to send those out. So a lot of the funding freeze has defrosted and funds are making it out. But what we're not seeing is sort of the award of funds through pending grant programs where folks had already applied, and we're not seeing the release of many new grants. So there are still some out there, but I expect we'll start seeing more of those soon.
Yeah. And are you, like, as it relates to law enforcement, like, this is the community that you've helped, build and have a lot of expertise in this area. Like, talk about the heavy hitters. So, like, the JAG grants, UASI, I don't know, what others are like the big heavy hitters for law enforcement, the police, that was a Safer Communities initiative, like these type of things. Like, what are you seeing in those ones that our audience is going to be particularly interested in?
Sure. So, burn JAG formula allocations came out last year. We're not due for the new formula allocations. I'm probably not for another month or 2. So those seem to be flowing really well. UASI funds and all the state Homeland Security Grant Program funds are triggered by passage of an appropriations bill. And we finally this weekend, and we can talk about this and how it impacts everything, passed a full year continuing resolution, which triggers the UASI process and the state Homeland Security Grant Program process with sort of this 60-day process. So that's all going to move forward. I'm not concerned about that. Competitive grants like community policing development, burn criminal justice innovation, smart policing, those are definitely on hold right now. But other funding streams, like for law enforcement technology, we end up doing funding out of HUD often. We're doing funding out of not only community development block grant, but public housing funds. There are a lot of creative ways to fund law enforcement technology. Most of them have been around since well before the last administration. I think we're really going to see mostly regular order, probably delayed, but we're going to see those funds flow. I'm really confident of that, particularly now that we have a full year spending bill.
Right. Yeah, that was pretty big. Democrats relented. They let the bill through. It's going to go through. Everybody's generally happy. What are you thinking on the grant side of the house? Like, you know, I guess, like, just like maybe even like at the strategic kind of like zooming out level. On the one hand, you have DOGE looking to cut government spending and be efficient. On the other hand, you have a party that's traditionally associated with law and order. They seem to, like, are they gonna, like, long term over the 4 years? Like, read the tea leaves a little farther for me.
Well,
This is maybe a selfish question. I'm just also curious, like, where it's going.
Totally. I am seeing that most of the DOGE cuts are to the sort of the government infrastructure. It's people infrastructure, not necessarily to the grant programs. So it's going to be harder to administer some of these grants with fewer people. This is not it seems unprecedented. It's not unprecedented. We've seen many other presidencies where, perhaps not in such a dramatic fashion, but there have been cuts to the federal workforce. And I'll be honest, when they cut the workforce, they tend to outsource it to government contractors. I mean, you need a certain amount of people to get this stuff done. But I don't see cuts being made to some of these traditional grant programs that have really, really vocal constituencies. There are 2,000 communities that receive HUD community development block grants. Every law enforcement agency in the country receives burn JAG funds. There are just big constituencies for these, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of vocalization here that local law enforcement is, like, spending their funds carelessly. We all know they're not getting enough funding. So if anything, it really needs to be increased and made to be flexible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a good sentiment to remember too. We have a lot of customers that use grant money to purchase things, and they've been relatively knee jerk in their, and from my point of view, like, really knee jerk in their reaction to a new administration, where my read was kind of like yours, which is like, hey, look, like money's mostly going to probably still be dispensed. No administration wants to be on the news for, reducing funding to law enforcement, particularly in this environment. Like, this isn't 2020, right? Things are moving in that direction. But maybe let's back up even further for the entrepreneurs that listen to. Um, this is all very esoteric. Like, how do people even begin to engage with the federal procurement process, even talking and speaking grant language, which is like a totally different language for a lot of startups? Like, how can they begin to engage with Congress, with a person like yourself, in a meaningful way?
Yeah, sure. Let me take one even bigger step back and
Okay.
explain what I call federal funding.
Let's do it.
Because I think when people think federal funding, they think sometimes about federal agency spending. And federal funding is typically not about like federal procurement or federal agencies like DHS or DOJ buying things. It is about funds that flow from federal agencies to typically, in our case, state and local law enforcement. So the only folks that are eligible to use these funds are, cities and counties and their law enforcement agencies. So that to me is federal funding. And that funding flows down in a few different ways. Some of it flows through formula awards like BIRDJAG, which is based on population and crime statistics and recurs every year. And the local agency gets to decide how they want to spend it, really flexible. And then some of it is competitive grants. And those are grant solicitations that go out. It may be sort of, $8 million a year through smart policing, competed, and, 12 agencies win it. And that's, a significant application that has to be completed. And so that's another way that federal funding flows. And then there's discretionary funding that comes from federal agencies. I know we'll talk about earmarks because that's a whole other brand of federal funding. But sort of where I come in is that I know that there are a lot of local agencies that are intimidated by applying for federal funding, feel like, gosh, that's somebody else's money. We could never get that. We don't have an in-house grant writer. We don't have poverty problems. Our crime statistics aren't bad enough. Like every single reason to not pursue funding. And really, where I come in is I try to give these agencies some confidence that there is funding, because there is. And their neighboring agencies are getting it and they deserve to get their fair share. And that they can pursue this. Well, I mean, we'll help them. We'll give them language. We'll get political support. We'll do sorts of things like that. But it's not somebody else's money. It's money for your community. And if you're an entrepreneur who's talking to these agencies who are saying, "Hey, I love it. I want it. Wish I could have it. I don't have the money." There is an answer, and it is federal funding. And there are lots and lots of ways to fund law enforcement technology.
What do you say to the people that come to you and say, yeah, that's great, but like, I want to fill out this grant application. It's going to be 9, 12, 18 months until they can actually buy this thing. How do you help startups and companies kind of running through the longer cycle associated with the grant pipe versus the other, they just write a check, go for it?
Yeah, it is going to take some time. One thing that I always tell customers when I'm talking with them is that, hey, if you're eager to get started, go ahead and use your local money. We can use federal funds to extend or expand. That's no problem. So if you're eager, go ahead and get started. But if you have to wait, there are lots of different ways to pursue federal funding. One way that I like to do is I really like to check in and see if they have any unexpended federal funds.
Yeah.
Often there's old BIRDJAG money, there's old CDBG money, there's the state's holding on to some old SHUSGAP money. And I think that these communities are worried that if they didn't spend it 3 years ago or 4 years ago, or if they decided they don't want to spend it the way they intended to, that it's gone and it's kind of embarrassing and there's nothing we can do about it. And I'm really here to tell you that it is really hard for Attorney General Bondi to go to Congress and say, I need more money in my budget when it hasn't been expended. So there is a real interest on the part of these granting agencies, to get the money out the door. So if we can find that there are unexpended funds, perhaps, we can often get those reprogrammed really quickly.
Yeah. Especially if it's kind of like getting close to the end of the year and like those type of things, right?
Yeah. Or or it can be many years old. I mean, it can be 4 or 5 years old. The other way I really like to work with entrepreneurs is sometimes it's about helping those eager but unfunded customers and working with them one-on-one and getting them funding. And sometimes it's knowing the moment that potential customers got federal funding. So it is knowing that, the following 15 communities got law enforcement technology funding, that there were 20 earmarks for LPR in last year's appropriations bill, and here's who got them. So it's not only about helping eager but unfunded customers, but also identifying potential customers with money to spend and contacting them at the very right moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we just saw that,
Just saw you got an award. We have a solution that exactly addresses what you want to. It does. It absolutely does.
It works. So Amanda, backing up, how did you like get into this like specific niche, right? So you're serving in the senator's office, right? You get some expertise, start to know everybody on the Hill. That's part of it. But like, why do you care about law enforcement and helping this kind of niche part of not niche, but this industry? Why do you care about this industry?
Sure. So when I was on the Hill, I was doing a lot of appropriations work. I was getting earmarks for entities in Florida specifically. And so when I left, I was doing that same kind of work, working with cities and counties, not only on law enforcement, but everything from building roads to beach renourishment to FEMA recovery, anything a local government needed. And I was helping them get earmarks. And 20 years ago, a little company at the time called ShotSpotter came to me and said, hey, if you can get your clients' earmarks, do you think you could get our customers' earmarks? And I said, I bet I could. And so 20 years ago, I started doing this work with local law enforcement to help them get funding. And we were doing earmarks back then. We're back to doing earmarks now. They've been my client for 20 years. And it's been very exciting. They're now sound thinking. It's been very exciting to see them grow. And they've grown a lot based on communities initially deploying using a federal investment and then graduating to be able to self-fund typically.
I think it's interesting to me. I had to go through like a learning loop when I first started engaging with lobbyists and with, folks that understand DC. I'm just curious if this lands with you at all. The first time I went through the loop, not at Multitude, I felt weird engaging with a lobbyist. Like you have this perception of what lobbying is. And like, it's a negative one. Everybody says, it's the swampiest part of the swamp. It's the blah, 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 blah. Right. And I only say this to you because I know you well, but then you realize that like, no, there's a whole set of people who, because of how complex this thing is, you really need guidance to do this well. I mean, when does a startup or a company, I should say, more broadly, like when should they start thinking about doing that? When do they actually need professional help to do it as opposed to filling out stuff on sam.gov?
Stay away from sam.gov.
Never
send a customer to grants.gov to find something. You'll lose that customer in a second. Yeah. It's scary. I run from grants.gov. Let me go back to your point really quickly first about different kinds of lobbyists, because, I think when people think of lobbyists, they really don't think of the kind of work that I do. You're right. I think people think of people at fundraisers and cocktail parties and all that stuff, which sounds lovely, but I'm kind of the spreadsheet sort of lobbyist. I'm the boring lobbyist. I write memos. I review documents. I do lots and lots and lots of conference calls with clients and their customers. But really, there are lots of different ways to use a lobbyist. There's the example we've given, which is helping specifically with federal funding. So federal funding consulting. But there's also lobbying to support specific legislation or to support legislation with specific funding streams that could support your customers, or legislation that you could oppose or promote because it is a threat or an opportunity for your industry. So there are all different kinds of lobbying to do. I think it is always smart to find ways to work better with the federal government. And when it comes down to it, that's really what I do. I either help the companies that I work with or their customers to form really strong partnerships with federal agencies, with folks on the Hill. And typically, when we're working with folks on the Hill, it's because they want to support their constituents. Either they want to support their constituent law enforcement agencies by helping them get federal funding, or if you're a company that's based in a congressional district, your member of Congress wants to make you successful. So it's really important to be in there telling the story of how you're growing and how you're creating jobs in their district so that when you do need some help with something, you're already friends. They already know who you are. I think it is. I hate to go into a congressional office with like an ask. I want to
Right
make sure
away.
that we
Yeah.
establish the relationship first,
Yeah.
that we become friends first, so that they're really eager to look for opportunities for your company, whether it's through funding, whether it's through policy, whether it's through like testifying at in congressional hearings, just really making sure that there's a strong bond. Because let me tell you, as a former Hill staffer, I wanted to be able to help everybody in the state of Florida. I did. And I know my boss did. When it came down to it, I could really help those constituents and those companies and those communities who came to me, established a relationship, and had really great projects that reflected really positively on all of us, and that I felt like we could accomplish. And often it was a lobbyist who was able to find that nexus between the local issues and the local company and the federal government.
Yeah, you need somebody to translate. I remember the first time I engaged with Congress ever was through a MLA, a military legislative assistant. And, it just worked out. Navy vet, MLA, I can call the guy. I say, I remember, I know the unit that you were at. Hey, I just, we're working on this project in Montana and we really want to engage with Senator Tester. How do we do that? You know what I mean? Like, and just, it started with a phone call, and then then we have a conversation about, hey, we're trying to build real value here, and oh, by the way, there's an economic benefit to the state, and kind of went from there.
That's a great point. It really is about telling a story. So it is about the economic benefit. It is about the benefit on communities. It's really walking in there and educating, these staffers on what you do and how it's really benefiting that state or district.
Yeah. This is a brief side note, but I took I think it's maybe even sitting on my bookshelf back here, but I took a class when I was at the Kennedy School called Lobbying, Professor Fagan, and he explained lobbying as actually these are the principal educators of legislatures. In other words, like their job, there's too much for a given member of Congress to have some high level of expertise on with the level of decision making they need to do for them to really know it all. And so really they rely on lobbyists, often from opposing sides, coming together and saying, here's the pro and the con. And yes, they have moneyed interests behind them, but that's not necessarily a problem if those interests are explicitly laid out, which they have to be if you're a registered lobbyist, right?
They have to be, absolutely.
I'm doing your defense of lobbying for you, I think, but yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
But anyhow, so yeah, I do want to talk about earmarks because this is one of those things that has gone away, it's come back, and is it staying around now?
It is staying, yes.
It's too popular to go away. So what's an earmark?
It
How
does
do I
grease
get
the
one?
wheels a little bit. It helps things
Yeah.
get done around here. And I would argue that it is like one of the most fundamental responsibilities of a member of Congress is to bring resources home. And that members of Congress know their communities and their needs better than folks at federal agencies, bureaucrats, which
Go
I love
figure.
a bureaucrat, but they don't always know everything that's going on in a particular congressional district and what those needs are. And for anyone who's not familiar with earmarks are the way that members of Congress bring money home to important local initiatives. There are so many sort of untruths that are out there about earmarks. It's not spending over and above the normal federal budget. What it is, for example, in the Commerce Justice Appropriations Bill, let's say there is, $30 million for law enforcement technology. What Congress would do is say, of that $30 million, we want the first $10 million to go to the following, 15 projects, and then the rest can be competed. So that's what happens with the Burn Jag account, for example. There are funds that sort of come off the top before they distribute the rest to local law enforcement. And it's a highly transparent process. When I worked on the Hill, it wasn't so much a highly transparent process. And so there were some projects that snuck through that would probably embarrass some members of Congress.
It's like the bridge to nowhere thing, right? Like
Bridge
that's what
to
people.
nowhere, there was a famous teapot museum, all that good
Wait,
stuff.
where is this teapot? Where's the teapot museum?
Teapot museum's in North Carolina somewhere. I don't know if it ever got built, but I remember that there was a we'll have to look into that. We'll have to find that earmark.
Yeah, I'll Google it.
And so this is the way that, so constituents can come to their member of Congress and senator and say, I would like the following amount of funding for the following purpose, and this is why. It is far less onerous than those big grant applications. We're talking about, a 1 to 2 page request letter, a couple page form that needs to be filled out. And then over the past few years, the House seems to have settled into allowing House members to request up to 15 projects. My experience is that if you make it on that top 15 list, you're going to get funded. That's at least what I've experienced over the past few years. Not every member of Congress and senator requests earmarks. Some do not. I would say the vast majority of Democrats do. Maybe 70% of Republicans do. But so you'd want to look and see if they have a history of requesting earmarks before you approach them. This is the time of the year when we are submitting those earmark requests. It's delayed a little bit. There's a little bit of uncertainty and confusion because of the continuing resolution. I can talk about that a little too. But members of Congress and senators are accepting earmark requests right now. We are waiting for guidance from the House and Senate appropriations bills because every year they tweak sort of what's allowed in terms of what accounts and who can apply for it. But now is the time of the year when we submit those. And then, probably 6 to 8 weeks from now, those members will put out their priority list. And then a month or so after that, we'll see most of those projects in the House appropriations bill. So they can pick 15 projects. So from without, and
a discrete 15, not a monetary amount.
Not a monetary amount, a discrete 15. And they have to publish it on their website, and there are links to the requests on the House and Senate Appropriations Committee websites. So it's really clear. On the Senate side, over the past couple of years, senators have been able to request as many earmarks as they would like.
Interesting.
Now, I would say it's typically better to request on the House side because since senators can request so many projects and we don't always know the rankings, and there are some senators out there who put out a list of 600 projects they requested so they can take credit for requesting a lot of projects.
I tried.
I tried. Exactly. Yeah. But on the House side, if you make the cut of that top 15, you're pretty likely going to get funding.
Yeah. Okay. And an earmark would be an explicit, hey, there's going to be this bucket of money. We want to make sure that 3.5 million of it is set aside for this project that is going to be fulfilled by my company. Is that right?
Well, never fulfilled by a company. Yeah. So earmarks this is a really good point. Earmarks go to nonprofits and public agencies. But often we are working with the customers, those nonprofits and public agencies, to get funding for their purchase.
They would purchase
from a company.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's like another layer. I don't know, how would you put it? Like there's another like abstraction layer away from a company.
Oh yeah, it's very far. It's in many ways far removed from a company. An earmark will not say a specific technology name. It could say an earmark to the city of Washington, to the District of Columbia for $1 million for license plate readers or for gunshot detection. There's never a company name because there are procurement requirements that all local agencies have to follow after they get a federal award. And sometimes they can satisfy that with a sole source justification. More often they're going to RFP.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I mean, there's like, you need a career's worth of experience to be able to navigate this.
Yeah. And it changes. The requirements change and the process changes. And so we try to adapt to help as many communities as possible meet those changes.
Yeah. Really interesting. Okay. So what are you thinking? Like, give us the calendar. So you said right now, they're submitting earmark requests. Like, what's a calendar year look like for you, I guess, and like supporting what your clients are?
There's always something we can be doing on federal funding. I would say that typically this is a really typical time of the year to be submitting earmark requests. Um, in a tip, and we'll know how those turn out sort of in the summer. Though the appropriations bills won't pass till much later than that. They're supposed to pass by the end of September. This year, we still weren't able to pass them by March 13th.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Oops.
Typically, this time of year, we'd be doing a lot of competitive grants as well. Those are being pushed off a little bit. So we still have pending ones that went in sort of at the end of last year where we are working on political support. Competitive grants are just that. And there are many, many more competitive submissions that go in than there is funding. So we need some differentiators. And that's where we bring in, a constituents member of Congress or senator to support the application. We write draft letters of support. We prepare talking points. We make sure that this application gets noticed. And I think it really does help. It's a big differentiator between applications when the member of Congress, cares enough because we've armed them with the tools they need to advocate. So we're doing a lot of that right now. We are waiting for a lot of grants to be released. We have a lot of communities that are excited to apply for grants once they become open. That'll happen in the coming weeks and months. So that is going to keep us really busy. But there's something we can be doing any time of the year to advance federal funding, whether it's competitive grants, whether it's, when these awards come out, again, letting our entrepreneurs know how to follow the money.
Yep.
Sometimes it's finding the money, sometimes it's following the money. So there's really always something that can be done.
Yeah. Okay, and so if I'm submitting now, it means I have to have a relationship already. So when's the time a guy like me says, Amanda, I need to probably start making some friends in Washington, D.C., and I want to be cost effective to do so. When should I show up? And, so that you're not showing up in February and then in March asking a member of Congress to go do something.
So I tend to take on most of my clients really in September in preparation for the upcoming fiscal year. The summer is relatively slow in DC. August is very, very, very slow in DC. So I do have some stragglers who I'm working with who have just started in the past few weeks and months, and we're helping them as well as we can because there are opportunities now because things are delayed. But we're kind of at the point of the fiscal year where we're getting started now, today, or we're probably going to wait until September.
Yeah, okay. And like when you're building these relationships too, it strikes me that like we're referring to it as like, oh, I got to make sure the member of Congress. But we all know that like most of that's actually engagement with the staff, right?
A lot of it is, yeah.
Like as a former staffer, like I think of West Wing a lot, right? Like
my 17-year-old daughter just watched every episode of West Wing. So West Wing is very topical in our house. She loved it.
It's like kind of like this. It's like this feel-good show. Like, I remember watching President Bartlett, and this will tell you where I am. Like, I'm a very like moderate politically person, probably like a slightly moderately to the right. And I remember watching this show. I watched it during COVID and being like, oh my God, like a reasonable person, like, and I mean that on both sides.
And you just felt like, gosh, he really does want what's best for this country.
Yeah. He's like America's grandpa's type of vibes a little bit. And then
totally.
I don't know. It's also, it's a different moment completely. Like if I can like put on my political theory hat for 2 seconds, it's like, it's also like post Cold War, America's the best. Like there's no other power to fight against. Like there's some environmentals going on.
And it was the era that I was working on the Hill because I'm older than you, Matt. So that was when I was doing older than you.
I didn't know that.
That's what I was doing. So my 17-year-old has enjoyed watching that. And it's been fun to kind of pop in as she's watching and be like, oh, I remember that. But yeah, it's just like West Wing every day here, Matt. I'm
sure it's every day. But where I was, so I had a point with that though.
The staffers.
I had a point, right? Which is you have to build a relationship with the staffers. So like, what does that look like? Are you walking through the Capitol and dropping in and saying hello? Are you?
No, staffers do not want you to do that. No, they don't want you to. They never want you dropping in, Matt.
I think that's what people think though. I think that you are Remy Denton from House of Cards, and you're just swinging into Frank Underwood's office to like put a power play on him. Like that's what people think.
That is what people think. That's not what I do. So I will always sort of see things from the staff viewpoint. And I knew that as a staff person, like I said, like I was getting so many requests for so many things. And it was so refreshing when somebody would come in with not just a problem, but also a solution. you know,
That's
all
life, right?
packaged
I mean, that's,
all
yeah.
packaged nicely. Like, look what we can do together. I'm gonna make it really easy.
Here's an easy win.
Exactly. So I am always trying to sort of take the load off of a staffer. So can I draft that for you? Here's a one-page briefing sheet. I mean, we have such intelligent people working on the Hill, but they're so busy that they don't have the time for the kind of detail they would like to have. And as a result, everything gets boiled down to one very consumable page. And then we can answer more questions and give more backup. But I never walk in with more than one page because I'm very respectful of their time.
Staffers' day starts at 6 a.m. and ends at 9, and
It's
it's
a long
brutal.
day. Yeah.
There's that tracker online for the White House pizza order. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
Do you know about this? Okay, so apparently you can tell when something's going on in the Situation Room with how much pizza gets ordered. And there's like off-hour pizza orders, and it's all getting delivered.
You got to be nervous when you get the 3 a.m.
I know.
pizza orders, right?
Like, that's my barometer for how busy someone is like what time of night the Domino's order gets put in and like how big it is. So, okay. I want to talk a couple more things. I want to make sure we talk about some success stories because it's a lot of grind, but like you're making some really big impact for your customers. Mention flock safety, but sorry, not flock safety. I'm thinking, but are there any other like really big wins? You don't have to say the client name, obviously, but like success you're able to have there.
No, I think we've had success with a lot of different technologies, whether it's.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
By the way, I'm having a fire alarm in my house. So hold on one second.
Go check it out. Yeah, go check it out.
In one room. Silenced in this room. Smoke alarm is over.
Okay.
Okay.
And we're not sponsored by Google Nest Protect, but that's how that works.
Okay, very good. Successes. So I've worked with all different kinds of technologies. So whether it is license plate readers or mass notification systems, I've worked with, I can't think of a law enforcement technology that I haven't sort of had my hands in. I think what's really been exciting is that there are ways to really use technology as a force multiplier that blow my mind every day. Like police have access to tools I couldn't have imagined when I first started doing this work 20 years ago. And I just want to make sure that as many as possible are able to actually use them. I mean, just to know it's out there. So I really love doing projects that integrate multiple technologies, sometimes from multiple vendors. It is never about the shopping list when we help somebody with federal funding. It is always about the use case. It is always about the story. It is always about, we have this problem in our community that we need to solve, and we think that the following solutions will get us there. And we're going to collect the data. We're going to show you how this works, and we want to be an example to other communities. So yeah, it's always about how well we can sort of express the need. And never about, we want to buy the following three things. Really.
The way you said that makes me think like the real-time crime centers must be doing very well with this approach, right? Because this is like, it's exactly that, right? It's integrating multiple techs, pieces of technology, which is, I think, good optically and also a good use case to be able to say, hey, we're going to put these things together and really make an impact. That must be a lot of success from that side of things. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I went down. There's a major law enforcement agency in South Florida that I helped with an earmark for a real-time crime center. And I was down there in October. And we've gotten funding like 2 years ago. It is so exciting to walk into a crime center like that and see it in use. It is mind-blowing. I mean, I learn about these technologies every day, but to see it in use is really, it's really rewarding. It's why I love working not only with local law enforcement, but local governments, because I love seeing that bridge being safely rebuilt. I love seeing sand back on the beach and habitat recreated. I love that a lot of the work that I do is tangible. And sometimes the way it's tangible in law enforcement is walking into a real-time crime center. And sometimes the way it's tangible is seeing crime statistics that reflect that local law enforcement has the tools they need to decrease violence and to arrest bad guys and to see those numbers come down. And so it's very tangible.
Yeah.
I don't know how, I mean, there are people in this town who do tax policy and things like that. And
I mean, that's a special person, right? I mean, that's like
important work. It is
it's
important
super.
work. People who do insurance lobbying, important work. It's not what I could do, because I like seeing how the work I do is actually impacting people on a day-to-day basis.
That's a special guy or gal that's getting in there and getting into the weeds on.
They're popular, Matt. Their tax lobbyists are very in demand right now. We're about to do a big reconciliation bill, and I am happy to watch that one from the sidelines.
I'm sure they make great money too. Like I'm sure. I am 100% sure, but I have zero desire to do that. I'm going to keep building over here. So wanted to, I don't know. So we talked about like the good stuff. Like what's like a bad day at the office though for you, for lobbyists in general? Like what's like the worst case scenario? The other side of the coin.
Okay, let's go back 48 hours ago.
Okay.
Can I give you a bad day that just happened?
It just happened.
It's a bad
Saturday?
day. Well, it was late Friday. I mean, I woke up to it Saturday. My clients were asking me about it Saturday morning. So when they passed, so Congress has one job every year, which is to pass 12 appropriations bills to keep the federal government running. Like I said, they're supposed to have that done by October 1st. And they didn't have it done by October 1st. And they didn't have it done by late December. And they decided, we'll just wait till March to take care of this. Which is difficult timing, because there are a lot of other things Congress needs to be taking care of right now, like starting on next year's appropriations bills, really ambitious things that the leadership wants to do in this reconciliation package, lots of tax issues. And so we got to this point in time last week where it became clear that they had not come to agreement on a full year appropriations bill, and decided, and again, this is unprecedented, to pass a full year spending package to keep the government open at fiscal year 24 funding levels for the remainder of fiscal year 25. And when they did that, they also wiped out every earmark included in the fiscal year 25 bill. So it was a bad Saturday morning.
That's a bad day at the office.
Because I had all these communities that have had money pending in those bills since the House, started working on them last spring. Like really, probably like 9 months. We've seen this in writing. We're going to get it. We're going to get it. We always get it. It always passes into law. And this year they were all removed. Now there is a scenario. We got 6 months left. We could do another spending bill that makes some technical corrections to the FY25 continuing resolution and adds back in all those earmarks. But right now, all those earmarks, all those communities, all those very, very important community projects have gone poof. And that was a bad day.
Yeah, and it's just a stroke of a pen, too. There's nothing you can...
Right.
Yeah, exercise any control. Oh, that's bad.
That's bad. Yes.
Bad day.
A bad day. But then I got up on Sunday and started planning for... we've still got we've had so many FY26 earmarks to submit. Now we may be resubmitting the FY25 ones. I had a lot of clients in town over the past couple weeks. And I would, we start the day in the office with sort of a briefing and a plan for the day. And here's what we're going to say. And every morning I'd have to say, I was using the word murky and unprecedented just so much. Like, it's a little bit of a murky day. We don't really know what's happening with appropriations. This is unprecedented. So, yeah. So I don't feel today like there's that much more certainty, but I am really happy that our federal government is open and that our federal workers are working and that we didn't shut down. So that is a good thing for sure.
Yeah. That's like truly nobody wins when they do the brinksmanship thing and shut down over policy disagreement or what have you. It's just, there's so many things riding on it, not to mention my own, as a reservist, like it always screws things up for us where, I've got a trip coming up that, runs on a government credit card that may work or may not work, You got
a $1 limit now, Matt. Watch out.
Yeah, I need to call those guys, figure out, hey, like put this thing back on, turn this thing on. So Yeah, no, they don't. I don't think they don't usually consult with Lieutenant Commander White over here before I get on the go. So, all right, I want to close out with my kind of traditional closing question, which is, I'm having a ton of fun, like working every day and building what I'm building. Got a great team, got great people around us. We're building something we feel is important and making an impact. Been interviewing people that are doing the same thing and really like tend to enjoy wholeheartedly what they do. Whether at work or at home, what's the most fun you've had lately? What are you doing that's really getting you going and excited?
Hey, can I do just a straight out fun, not work thing? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
totally. It's preferred.
Okay, because I have to tell you, this is my busy season. I am always, for the past 20 years, I've been so busy this time of year because we have appropriations and we have, earmarks to submit and we have competitive grants this time of the year and clients coming to town. And so I never get to take any time off this time of the year. My husband has been traveling a lot. I've got a high school junior who's stressed with all the like standardized testing. And I was coming back from a work trip 2 weeks ago, and my husband said, "This Saturday is the only weekend day for like the next 2 months where we are not booked. Let's go to Walt Disney World for one day." And we did. We did.
Jumped on the plane and went for it.
So it was like, we were like 6 days out. We were going to go up and back in the same day. We ended up flying out late Friday night, getting to Orlando, having dinner at Disney Springs at like 11 p.m., doing the
That's
parks
great.
the next day. And we were back in our beds Saturday night because the next morning was the National Association of Counties meeting here in DC. So I was up and at 'em and working. But like, I have to tell you that one crazy day, has
Crazy
really
day.
been getting me through. And as somebody who has one child away at college and one child still at home for just one more year, like I'm really trying to soak
Yeah,
up all those moments with the
yeah,
younger one when I can.
yeah. Oh, that's really nice. I mean, my little boy just turned 3 on Sunday, actually, and I'm like blinked, and so every cliche, parenthood is one big cliche where you're like, oh my God, everybody talks about how great this is, but man, it's moving fast. I can only imagine having a 17-year-old and one in college. Great.
So just fun this time.
I love it. That's what we like to learn. So, Amanda, thanks for coming on the podcast. And, I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy getting a little bit more technical deep dive into this. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, Matt White here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Multitude Insights, and that's kind of my primary day job. But I started this podcast because I wanted to have conversations with the people that I found interesting. So that means the people on the front lines in law enforcement. It means the investors investing in companies, building in public safety. It means leadership and all the people that kind of make this thing work. Right. So if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to see more like it, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, the follow button, whatever it might be on whatever platform you're viewing this on. And I'd love to have you along for the journey. Talk to you soon.